you live right here in downtown Houston, Texas, right here on the Buffalo Bayou. That's right, the Buffalo Bayou is where the Allen brothers discovered Houston. That means the Allen brothers, that means in 1837 is when they discovered Houston right here off the Buffalo Bayou. And we're talking about the Allen brothers. That's John Kirby Allen and his oldest brother, Augustus Allen. And you know, by the way, the mother of our city, Houston, Texas, that I didn't know was Miss Charlotte Allen, because it's Miss Charlotte Allen is the wife of Augustus Allen. And it was her inherited money that she gave her husband to invest in this new territory that we call today Houston, Texas. And the reason why it's the Houston, Texas, because I'm so excited, y'all. Y'all got to excuse me, I'm excited to be here. It's a blessing. And it's a blessing to know that God give me this knowledge so I can pass it on and leave a legacy here on Facebook and YouTube and Google. Because right here, Sam Houston, he married John Allen's daughter. Sam Houston was a son-in-law to the Allen family. That's right, he married John Allen's daughter. Sam Houston was a governor. And listen, he was 36 years old. And when he married Elizabeth Allen, she wasn't but 19 years old. So what do that mean? That John Allen had to sign, him and his wife had to sign for Sam Houston, who was 36 years old and was the governor of Tennessee when they got married. But he was married, and the reason why our city is called Houston today, because Sam Houston was one heck of a guy. He was a real strong general. He came and organized Texas Army in 1 year to defeat Santa Anna out there at the Sanya Center battleground. It took him 1 year. And when he defeated Santa Anna and Texas got its independence from Mexico, the Allen family bought this land, this territory land, and had the dream of building them a city. But for the great son-in-law they had, Sam Houston, to do what he did, they decided to name the city after him. And also, as you can see on this sign, 1899, they decided to donate a park. And in this park is historical houses that have been restored, such as the Allen family, such as our leader, Reverend John Henry Jack Yates. That's right, his house is over here, and we will show you all this. But I want to get this straight and let everybody know that they did not give blacks nothing in Third Ward. They did not give that to blacks. Blacks went out and worked for it and earned it. They did not give Reverend Jack Yates and the members of his congregation those 10 acres out there at Emancipation Park. He had to buy that. Took him $800 to buy it. But he pulled together with other black leaders and bought that property over there that we call Emancipation Park, right there off of Elgin and Dowling. I want to pass that history on because a lot of people think that they gave us 10 acres. They did not give us a damn thing in Third Ward. Jews, whites, and Italians did not give us Third Ward. We bought Third Ward. You hear what I say? We worked for it. Some of our ancestors was preachers. Some of them was doctors. Some of them went to school to be lawyers. And some of them worked for the government as mail clerks. And some of them went in the army. But I'll go through that and tell you more about it. But I'm so excited to be here. And thank you so much, Facebook family, for all y'all do for me and support me. Because it's y'all support. I don't get paid for this, but it ain't about money. Everything ain't about money. This that I'm doing is legacy, is history. is priceless. Money can't buy it. So I thank y'all for all y'all support. And
See, blacks had to buy all of this. They did not give blacks nothing. So let's get the record straight. The Italians sold a lot of this property that you're looking at right now to blacks. During them days, they used to call them Dagos. And all the Italians would rent this property out to blacks. And later on, some of the blacks started buying houses that the Italians was moving out of. And in 1939, when the World War II started and it ended in 1945, that's when blacks started buying a lot of property over here, including my uncle. Because he bought the property because he was working for the Jews at Houston Engineering Club. So they the one helped him get this property. See, it wasn't about you being black. It was about you working and being productive, and the people knew that you understood the system and understood what the Allen family and Houston was trying to do. Is to build a type of city like New York. Because that's where the Allen brothers originally was born and raised, up in New York. Now that's history. Google it up if you think I'm lying. This is some of the first property that blacks was buying in the 30s. Right up in here. And most of these blacks was living and raised up in the original part of 3rd Ward, which was downtown. Over there on Dowling and Lamar and Texas and McKinney and Polk. That's where these blacks was living at when they were kids. But when they got to be adults and got married, they got working. Wasn't no more slavery, so they was working. Some of them had went to the army in World War I, so they was veterans. And the government, and most of all, the Allen family was looking after them, especially if they were doing something constructive to help the city grow into a city. Because at that time, it still was a town. First, when the Allen family founded, it was a territory. And when they started getting people to invest in the city, in their territory, then it became a town. And once you had people that was investing, that means investing, buying land. And then in 1939, the government built this for blacks, low income. They called CUNY homes. This is history, y'all. All of this was for blacks in 1939. And if you wasn't working, or you was working and wasn't making enough money, or you was a single parent, you could qualify to come and live in the CUNY homes. And it was built in 1939, right when World War II started. And about 1945, blacks was coming out of World War II, having good money. They had saved up being in the army, and also had jobs that they was working. And then 10 years later, 9 years later, the state built them a university, which you're looking at now, Texas Southern. If you look at these houses, you could tell these was once Italians and Jews houses. Look at the structures. These are brick structures. These homes was built brand new in the early 40s and late 30s. And they was occupied by Jews. And when Jews and Italians moved out, blacks moved in. When I say they moved in, they bought their way in. They didn't get no free ride in to 3rd Ward. No, they had to work to get to 3rd Ward, especially on the other side where we at now of Alabama. Alabama was the cutoff line for blacks in the 40s and the 30s, even in the 20s. All right, we're on the corner of Delano and Alabama. On one side of Alabama over there was for blacks, and on this side of Alabama was for whites, Italians, and Jews. Now, on the other side of Rosedale and Sophomore was your upper class Jews. And Jews at that time, 60% of the Jewish population was self-employed. 10% of the Jewish population was doctors and lawyers and professionals. And the other percentage of the Jews was working for other Jews. And Jews would always have their Jewish symbol to let other Jews know that it is a Jewish establishment, and they would patronize it. And they would help each other until they got on their feet. And when they got on their feet, they would pay back that loan. It was not given to them free. And all of this was part of the Jewish area, which was called Riverside Terrace. And Houston annexed it in 1926. Such famous Jews that was in real estate like the Weingarten, the McGregor, Mr. Ben Taub. Yes, he was a Jew. Yeah, we're right here on Sophomore and Chowester. And right there was the first Jewish elementary school. And it was like a private school for Jews only. Most of the other white kids and HISD kids went to the elementary school that they gave blacks was Turner. But this school right here was a Jewish elementary school that later on they gave to blacks and called it Lockhart. All this area over here was Jewish areas. And blacks did not live on the other side of where we at now with Blodgett. This is on the other side of Blodgett, was all whites and Jews, predominantly Jewish area that lived over here. And the man who invested into a lot of property over here was Mr. Ben Taub. He sold this property over here that we're going to now, and it became the first, you hear what I say, the first subdivision built for blacks. And it was called Canfield Oaks. And it only ran one block. And that's the 3500 block of Ruth and the 3500 block of Rosewood. And the only side that had two sides to it, right and left, odd numbers and even numbers, was the 3500 block of Ruth. The 3500 block of Rosewood had only even numbers. And Mr. Ben Taub sold this property. And the developer was a black developer named Sterling Jones. And one of the biggest doctors in Houston bought the property, which covered 2 square blocks of Rosewood and Ruth, was Dr. Bowie. And right there is the original house and still part of the Bowie family. And he had, now this part over here, I think he sold it to Texas Southern. And it became a bookstore. But right here is the 3500 block of Rosewood. And as you can see, they only have even numbers over here on Rosewood in the 3500 block. And on that house right there, 3518, was like my spiritual mom, Miss Eula May Neal, and her son, Marvin Neal, her only son, and her daughters. May she rest in peace, Eula May Neal, Barbara Jean Neal, Marcella Neal, and Alva Neal, who now is Alva Howard. And this was the first subdivision, black, that was brand new, built for blacks. And as you can see, they still keeping this subdivision up. It's the 3500 block of Ruth, where it had odd numbers and even numbers right up in here. And look at the property. It still kept up. And Mr. Sterling Jones was a developer here. And later we go down Chowester, and this was a Jewish area. And the Jewish people had bought all this property for themselves because they could not stay in River Oaks, they could not stay in the Heights, and they couldn't stay in Memorial. Those places was for white only, regardless of how much money you got. That's why the Jews came out here and built their own little town. And it was called Riverside Terrace.